Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. And now we're keeping up, as always, with the Greek situation, so full of lessons for what to do and what not to do. So we're very happy to be joined by our fine correspondent in Athens, and that is Michael Chiotinis. So we got to get an update about what is happening now as this the new government and the new ministries actually begin functioning. So, Michael, you are on the ground. Tell us what's important.
Yes, hello. There's an article today in today's edition of Avgi, the newspaper that is friendly to the SYRIZA party. I found it's very interesting because I read it an hour ago with the title, "The Vital Lie," quote-unquote, vital lie. It has the form not exactly of a cultural review, rather some philosophical and ideological thoughts about a well-known play from the 1880s called The Wild Duck by Ibsen, Henrik Ibsen, the Norwegian playwright. The main theme of the article is to challenge the mainstream reading of the play, which is that sometimes reality is unbearable and you need to have a vital lie to go on living. It concludes arguing that the reverse is the case, that for a radical like Ibsen, the vital lie is only useful for people and societies that don't expect anything good to come in the future. So they passively and uncomplainingly accept their fate. This article, I'm telling you this because it's quite enigmatic for me, precisely because it's written effectively in the official newspaper of SYRIZA. Now, is the author trying to suggest that SYRIZA is offering vital lies, namely that this latest deal has any chance of working, or that SYRIZA really can bring something good following the mandates of the Troika? Or even the biggest lie of all, that Greece's EU partners will fulfill the promised debt restructuring, which is already debt restructuring, not a haircut. Or is this a critique of the society's passiveness and the defense of the strategic path that Tsipras has chosen? I don't know. All I know is that the signing of the New Deal, a week after 62% of Greeks had rejected a new memorandum through a referendum, is the reason of this passiveness. Now, there are still people in SYRIZA, MPs, who actually followed Tsipras and didn't go to the Popular Unity Party, who believed the theory that Tsipras was blackmailed and had to give in to the blackmail because he had no other plans ready for implementation. These people voted for the bailout deal, but we may yet see some of them not willing to vote for particular legislation. So we have some of the MPs that may yet deny voting for certain austerity legislation. And we have the people that voted for SYRIZA. They don't really expect the deal to be implemented, or they expect Tsipras to move the burden on the rich. Well, that's not going to happen, in my view, because the Troika is not interested in money. They're interested in imposing a specific social model. But anyway, we have two interesting things coming up. The Portuguese election, actually, the day after tomorrow.
Good.
And the polling shows that not a particular change of status quo is possible. And the Spanish election.
But we learned from Greece, don't believe the polls. And there's always the red shift. So we don't believe it, right?
Yeah, okay. But they show a fairly great lead anyway. And we have polling about the Spanish election of December 20th showing exactly the same thing. There's no visible trend about a shift of the status quo in other southern economies being attacked in this way of Greece. We had also members of the Popular Unity Party, the pro-Grexit party, announcing a detailed plan. This is by Professor Lapavitsas and Heiner Flassbeck. Heiner, exactly. Yeah. Heiner Flassbeck, a German politician and economist. And that's actually, our listeners can find it on the AthensRepublic.com. I've published it there. We had some Popular Unity members, former ministers, actually, bullied, intimidated. They were in Ukraine. They were at the Odessa region that's governed by none other than Mikhail Saakashvili. And they were intimidated, chased, and bullied by paramilitary groups, right-wing fascists. And we had a very interesting situation there. Fortunately, they're back and they are safe. This is it. Now,
just a couple of things. This Flassbeck, looking him up, right? So he's somebody who worked at UNCTAD, right? UNCTAD was considered one of the more radical parts of the United Nations bureaucracy. So he was at UNCTAD Geneva, right? United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. So he was there for, a good 10 years. But the problem with him is his theories seem to be based on two ideas. One, he wants to support Schumpeter, this German origin economist. And you remember the idea with Schumpeter is creative destruction, right? Let the depression burn itself out, right? Let it play itself out, right? It's actually close to the Austrian or libertarian view. But at the same time, he's got Wilhelm Lautenbach. And Lautenbach is the guy that we've talked about here. Lautenbach is the guy who says you don't let the depression burn itself out. You fight the depression. You launch a 2 billion Reichsmark proposal in those days, and you start building the Autobahn, and you build the telephone system and railroads and other things. And you soak up a whole bunch of unemployment, and you cut Hitler off at the knees, so the Nazis might not have made it. So the big question with Flassbeck is, are we going to get the Schumpeter side of him with creative destruction? I hope not. Or are we going to get the Lautenbach side? So the Lautenbach is again, what I think listeners of the program know, right? That's pretty much what I also represent, right? The W.S. Voitinsky German trade union plan, right? The one from the trade union.
Yeah, presented at the Friedrich List Society Club.
Yeah, the Friedrich List Society is the Lautenbach side, and then the Voitinsky Tarnow Bada WTB, right? That's the trade union one, and they agreed, and that would have been the basis for avoiding Hitler. Except this windbag Hilferding said, no, we can't do that because it violates Marxism, and it was actually because Hilferding was British and in league with Brüning, the austerity king. So that's that.
No, I think we have the positive part because they're talking about technology and production, and all I see is positive things, actually. Professor Lapavitsas has worked in Argentina, about China. He has these particular models of industrial development and growth and technological cutting-edge technology. So I think we're going to get something positive from this, but we must start.
And there we are. So thank you, Michael. We'll see you next week.
Thank you very much.
And I'm going to say a few words about Ibsen here in the next segment. Back in a minute. Welcome back to hour 2 of World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley speaking from Washington, D.C. Now, concerning Ibsen, right, the wild duck, this is the story, right? Is it a good idea to give somebody a myth about himself so that he can keep going? So it's a conversation between two guys, Gregers and Relling. And there's a third guy that they're discussing, a guy called Hjalmar Molvik. And Relling has said to Molvik, you're really a demon. And the question is, it doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's just a way for the guy to make some myth about himself so that he can keep going. And Relling, of course, is a total cynic. And Relling says, you should always bear in mind that ideals are not really anything that counts. We ought to use the national word or slogan, Norway, lies, he says. The other guy says, aren't these the same thing? Yes, they are. Gregers then says, look, I'm going to liberate this poor Molvik from your clutches. And Relling, this is the key quote, Relling then says, that would be the worst thing that could happen to our friend Molvik, because if you take away from the average man his vital lie, at the same time you're going to take away his happiness and his sense of life. So it's the idea, you've heard this as a cliche, right? That if you take away people's illusions, you leave them with absolutely nothing. So we naturally stand in reality, and the advice for Greece is stop with the chauvinism, organize internationally, right? You can't expect it to, you don't have a magic wand, but do something, ally with that Portuguese party, ally with the Spanish party, especially if they get rid of now the failed leadership of Pablo Iglesias, who has done very poorly in Catalonia, and also start an international consultation, right? There will be this Plan B, the International Plan B conference. There was an event earlier this month, I guess, in Paris with Mélenchon for the French Le Parti de Gauche, La Fontaine for Die Linke, the left of Germany, Fascina of one of the Italian parties, and Varoufakis. Okay, fine. So the Tax Wall Street Party is highly interested. By the way, if people find out more about that, please send me the information. Go to the Speakers Bureau part of tarpley.net, and there's a text box. Put it in there, and I will certainly thank you for it, because we're highly interested in intervening.